Another major area that is completely unaccountable in a similar vein is the asylum system, of course. And there's been a string of absurdities that you've written about brilliantly, Lionel, recently. One came up today. It was in the Sun. An Albanian terrorist who killed a policeman. He cannot be deported. The Sun basically has had this legal battle to reveal his name, essentially, because so many of these cases are anonymous. But he can't be deported because he might upset or he might incur the wrath of other crime bosses in Albania if he were to find himself there. What do you make of these kinds of cases, and have we just completely lost control of?
I've concluded that the only solution is to eliminate the asylum system altogether. I mean, I realize there's an element of pie in the sky there, but I don't mind planting the idea in some politician's mind. Maybe eventually this stuff will get so insane, though it's hard to imagine it getting more so, that someone will move on this. I don't even think that withdrawing from the European Court of Human Rights is enough. You'd also have to get rid of the refugee convention.
Yeah.
And I think that if you're really going to start picking all this stuff out, there's still other treaties that you'd have to withdraw from. I question the entire system. I don't understand why, as a legacy of World War II, we necessarily, just because we feel badly that we weren't welcoming enough for Jewish refugees, especially before the war, why does that mean that every Western country has to allow that every single person from anywhere in the world who sets a toe in their territory has immediate access to, if nothing else, the entire justice system, which they do not pay for or contribute to. And here, that system has gone nuts in protecting the rights of the asylum seeker. One of the things that really knocks me back when I read these articles, the Sun loves them. Someone can't be deported because his kid doesn't like foreign chicken nuggets. I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up. As a fiction writer, it spares me a lot of bother. What really knocks me back is the number of appeals a lot of these people have. It is not unusual to read that somebody has been denied asylum 8 or 9 times in a row. Why is that possible? Why can't you just make a single decision and there is no appeal? I mean, we could at least start there.
Or one appeal or something like that.
Yeah, not even one appeal. Just forget it. And this is expensive. And on top of that, of course, we allow that if you have set a toe in the territory, then you also have access to welfare, and there is some obligation of the state to put you up. We have all these expensive hotels. The British people are enraged over this, and so are the Americans. This is where Trump really has his finger on the pulse. It's like, this is out of control. The biggest issue in the U.S. economically is asylum seekers' access to health care, right? Which costs a fortune in the United States. So I think it's out of control. We just take it as a given that most of these people are not actually persecuted. They're looking for, quote, a better life, which is a little advertisement. The title of my new book. It is about immigration, but that's not out yet. So, they're gaming the system. It is just understood. And I don't even think we're sufficiently incensed about that. And furthermore, we're dealing with a judiciary, especially in the UK, which is chronically left-wing and is always looking for an excuse to let people stay. The approval rate is something like 75%. That's absurd. There's no way that 3/4 of these people on boats, for example, are coming from France, terrifying France, are doing anything but trying to look for better economic opportunity.
To sort of dwell for a moment on some of those more absurd examples, partly because it's colourful, but also because I think it's instructive. I mean, the fact that we've got now in the form of this kind of Albanian cop-killing gangster now has a kind of right to a quiet life, apparently, as a consequence of that. We've had the
Is there such a thing?
Well, but it seems to have been invented as a
A right
consequence
to a quiet life.
We've had the paedophile who's invoked his right to a family life in order to stay here, and of
Great
course,
family man.
the sex offender who needed his because of his sexual proclivities, couldn't be deported to his native Afghanistan. You contrast that with the very lofty, abstract, worthy discussion of this issue, and it is comical. I mean, people invoking Winston Churchill. Incidentally, this is the only issue on which left liberals apparently love Winston Churchill, and saying that as one of the architects of the post-war refugee human rights framework, he would abhor his party nowadays because of them inveighing against this. Do these people genuinely think that that right to a quiet life, that paedophile's right to a family life, or the Afghan sex offender to be protected from the consequences of him acting out his own proclivities, do they really think that that's what Winston Churchill or anyone else had in mind when they drew up this particular system? Obviously not. And also the point in which this has become a really fundamental democratic issue precisely because of the involvement of the judiciary and precisely because of these conventions which have taken on the status of holy writ, effectively. That it doesn't matter what the public think about it. It doesn't matter how many statements and schemes that the politicians cook up. It seems to be entirely impenetrable to democratic change unless you do something much more significant, unless you start to totally unpick this system. I think we are still waiting for a party that really has both the willingness and the plan to do so. But I think these stories are starting to cut through in a way that they weren't previously. You know, and I think everyone recognises that this really can't go on for all the reasons that we talked about. It's absurd, it's unjust, and also it's become an affront to democracy, effectively. So surely someone will come along eventually and make a clear-cut case as to not only why we should leave, that's kind of obvious, these various institutions, but how we're actually going to do it and carve out something like a properly just system.
The other critical right that's often invoked is the right to avoid torture, which just basically gets translated into someone might beat you up because if they find out you have sex with children, you know, that's what they consider to be torture under these kinds of laws. So it creates the effect where basically your committing of a heinous crime actually bolsters your claim for asylum because you might be mistreated in your home country should you ever be sent back.
That's assuming that you wouldn't be mistreated here for being a pedophile.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I'm not sure that it's, you know, often is implied that in Afghanistan they don't take kindly to this kind of thing, as if we love, you know, welcome pedos with open arms.